Hello, Leeds Beckett University students, and welcome to Webinar 5, which is all about tackling telephone and video interviews. You can see here where this fits with the rest of the series. So if you've missed episodes 1 to 4, then be sure to check those out. And we still have a few more topics coming up for you to explore as well. You can join all of them, or you can just sign up for the ones that are relevant to where you're at with your job search. All of the series is based upon my best-selling book, From Learner to Earner, which you can see a little picture of in the screen there, and it's available over on Amazon. So some brief introductions, if you haven't come across us before. I'm Sophie, I'm MD here at SRS. We work with employers and universities within graduate recruitment and employability. So we help employers by designing their assessment materials and helping them to recruit their graduates. And we work with universities on a range of employability activities, including assessment centre simulations. You can see there my social media handles. So if we're not already connected, I'd love to connect with you over on your favourite platform. Helen?
Yep, I'm the University Partnerships Manager for SRS. I work alongside Sophie, delivering these webinars, workshops, assessment centre experiences, anything which is going to help improve the employability and career prospects of students like yourselves. Hope you find this webinar really useful.
Thank you, Helen. So, at various points in the webinar series, we are joined by experts in graduate recruitment to hear their valuable insight and top tips. Today, we have some advice from Gemma Hurt. Gemma is the early careers leader at GE Aviation and has also worked for a number of other companies, all within the graduate recruitment space. So, she will have some useful tips to share with us today. So this is what we've got coming up for you. So we're going to look at what to expect within telephone and video interviews, common mistakes, and also how to answer the most challenging questions. Now we are looking at this method within the wider assessment process as coming before the assessment centre stage. So typically you will have submitted an application form and or CV, maybe done some online tests, and then this is that interview that's pre-assessment centre, and we will be covering final interviews in more detail later in the series, but a lot of what we're going to talk about in this session is relevant to interviews at whatever stage they come. So why are employers using these methods? Well, as society continues to embrace the digital world, more and more employers are using telephone or video interviews as part of their application process. At this stage, employers want to ensure that the strongest candidates make it through to the assessment centre or final interview. And these methods allow recruiters to see more people in less time, which is important given the high numbers of applicants applying for roles. They also allow recruiters to test you on your CV and application form to see if the information you've included adds up. It allows them to measure your communication skills, so they'll be paying attention to how well you conduct yourself and respond to their questions. Video interviews enable recruiters to see an applicant's flair or personality, and this can be especially important in the creative industries. They also support recruiters who need to conduct interviews long distance, which is vital right now. So what can you expect from a telephone interview? So often graduate recruiters will carry out a first interview over telephone, and knowing what to expect from the call and being prepared should always be top of your agenda. Telephone interviews typically last between 20 to 30 minutes, so you need to be succinct with your responses. Usually there'll only be one interviewer, and your interview may be recorded, but the interviewer will make you aware of this if that's the case. You'll likely be asked questions based on your CV, work experience, and education, and typically competency-based interview questions will be asked in order to draw out your skills, experience, and knowledge. Here are some typical questions that you might hear at a telephone interview. So take a look at those questions. I have got an interview preparation using STAR worksheet, which we're going to make available to you, which will help you to structure your responses. We'll make sure that we include this as a resource that's available with this webinar. And that would just help you to give very clear and detailed responses to these types of questions. So moving on now to look at video interviews. Pre-recorded video interviews are rapidly becoming popular with graduate recruiters. According to a recent survey carried out by the Institute of Student Employers, 53% of organisations are now using them as part of the selection process, and this is likely to be much higher now. Pre-recorded video interviews are commonly used where there is high volume recruitment for graduate roles. There is a small chance that you might have to complete a live video interview, particularly if the role is in another country and you're at the final stage of the process. Give some consideration as to how you would dress for a video interview, and we'll refer to that again a bit later. You'll likely be sent an invitation to log in to a system where you can access the video link and instructions. You'll then be asked a series of pre-recorded questions. The video interviews do typically last around 30 minutes, and they definitely will be recorded. There's often the opportunity to have a practice run so that you can get used to the system and format. And again, like telephone interviews, you're likely to be asked questions based on your CV, work experience and education, and these will typically be competency-based interview questions, although we have seen a few curveball random questions being asked at video interview. Let's hear now from our expert today, Gemma, on top tips at the video interview stage.
Hi everyone, I'm Gemma Hurt. I have been in early careers for a very long time, so I've seen a lot of video interviews, so hopefully these hints and tips will help. So the main thing is to treat your video interview like a real interview. So what do I mean? So dress the part. So even though you aren't travelling into an office or a site to meet your potential new employees, make sure you dress for an interview. That will just make you feel much more professional, and you'll feel like you're really in the right mindset for the interview. Also think about your background. I haven't done that today, so you can tell I'm sitting in my bed. So just have a think about, what does the interviewer actually see when they're watching your video interview, either live or watching it playback. So just have a look when you switch your camera on. What can they see behind you? So if you're in your room, maybe sit at a table, sit at a desk, and make sure you haven't got all your kind of dirty washing or anything behind you. So just have a look at what is the view that your interviewer will see. Also, if you live with your housemate or family, just let them know that an interview is happening. They wouldn't be coming along to a real face-to-face interview. So just make them treat it like a real interview. So ask them to be quiet. Make sure you shut whatever room you're in, shut the door, and just make sure that there's as little background noise as you can do. Not always possible, I appreciate, but where possible, try and make sure that you treat the environment in a calm and professional manner. Also, if you're in your interview, you probably wouldn't have lots of notes with you. So just try and not overly rely on kind of scripted answers or having notes on your desk, you're looking down like I am all the time throughout the interview. You want to try and keep the answers quite fluid and flowing. So don't think because they can't see what you're doing. Your interview will still be able to see if you're kind of checking lots of notes. If you do need notes, maybe stick them above your camera line. So when you're reading them, you're still maintaining eye contact, but don't rely on them too much because it will stilt the conversation, even if the conversation is only one way. So that's my real tip. Just treat it like a real interview. Relax as much as you can. Enjoy it. Make sure you lots of prep in advance so you're really ready and feel like you're giving your best answers. Good luck.
Great. Thank you there to Gemma. So if you want to practice or learn more specifically about video interviews, then you can see these logos on the screen here. These are logos for video interview companies, and they are the main ones here in the UK. So we would suggest that you have a look at their sites. They've got lots of hints and tips, and also I think some of them have the opportunity to have a little practice as well. So definitely have a look at that. We'll make sure that we share those links with you. So there are a few common mistakes that can often mean the difference between ruining your chances and moving to the next stage. Some important things to avoid would be using slang words or abbreviations, as the interviewer might not understand what you're talking about. Taking your call in an unsuitable location, for example, outside where it's noisy or on public transport or something. Forgetting your scheduled interview, so that's particularly important for telephone interviews where you will have a scheduled slot. Swearing, believe it or not, something we've heard a number of times. Being interrupted or getting distracted, so as Gemma said, make sure that you're somewhere quiet and everyone knows that you're doing your interview. Eating or chewing gum. Running out of phone or laptop battery midway through the interview, so make sure you're fully charged. And also, you know, it probably goes without saying, but make sure you don't smoke, that you're not talking about yourself in the third person or accidentally saying love you, bye, when finishing off that call. So I wanted to just share with you a few stories of things that I've heard about with video interviews. I asked my employer recruiter friends for some of their funny stories about things that they'd seen, and I've got some good examples to share with you. So one of the video interview companies that you saw on the previous screen was Shine Interview, and they told me about an example from one of their clients who told them about a candidate who ended up swearing at their mum on the video. The candidate apparently answered the question they were asked, then their mum, who was sitting in the room while the candidate recorded their interview, helpfully chimed in with, well, I wouldn't have said that, before the candidate had stopped the recording. And the candidate's reaction, while it was still recording, was to call their mum a few things that you'd certainly not expect someone to call their mother. An employer contact of mine, Paul, watched a video interview where the candidate's webcam fell to a 90-degree angle. And instead of taking just a few seconds to adjust the camera, the candidate just tilted his head to the side and continued that way for the rest of the recording. Probably my favourite story of all time, actually, with videos is from Philippa, who is an HR director that's based in Dubai. She was interviewing someone who was having technical issues with their video, so had called in their housemate, and the housemate arrived in the room completely naked. There were two other assessors on the call with Philippa, and she said at least it broke the ice between everybody. And in case you're wondering, the naked guy, when he realised he was on camera, tried to protect his dignity with the curtain. So yes, make sure any naked housemates have been confined to other rooms. So we've talked about some things to avoid. Let's move on now and look at opportunities to stand out, because there are many things that you can do to prepare for a telephone or video interview. So here are a few things that might help you to make a good impression. So first of all, do your research, look at the job role and the organisation that you're applying to, what stands out. Have a copy of your CV and or your application form to hand so you can remind yourself of what you've submitted already. Often that could have been quite a while before you get to this stage, so make sure that you refresh your memory. Have a notepad and a pen ready so that you can make notes as you go. Prepare your answers. So you don't want to prepare these in a very scripted way, because that comes across as very unnatural. But you can think about the typical questions that you may be asked and then give a bit of a thought as to how you might respond to these. You can just jot a few bullet points down to keep that loose. Write down any questions that you'd like to ask. Now, this will only be relevant for a live video interview or a telephone interview. But if it is live, you are likely to be asked at the end of the interview if you have any questions for them. So think about something that will make you stand out, and we will cover this in more detail again shortly. Get rid of any distractions, so turn off the TV or the radio and ensure that you're in a private space. And as we've already discovered, there's nothing worse than your flatmate or your parents walking in while you're in the middle of a conversation, so just make sure that they're aware of what's going on. A few additional things just to consider if you're preparing specifically for a video interview. So organise your surroundings. Gemma referred to that in the video clip earlier. The recruiter will be able to see things around you, so make sure that your surroundings are tidy and presentable. Dress appropriately. So if you're applying for a creative role, you may want to dress a bit more creatively or fashionably, but otherwise smart and professional is the best option. Test your equipment, make sure that your camera and computer are working correctly and that your internet speed and sound quality are good before the call. Nothing worse than a call that keeps losing connection. We will cover tech top tips in the assessment centre webinar that's coming up as well, so keep an eye out for that. So I'm going to hand you over to Helen now, who's going to take us through how to answer the most challenging questions.
Hey, thank you, Sophie. So in terms of some of the most challenging questions and some of the most commonly asked, what do you know about the company? So this is one that you should definitely prepare for. And you need to provide a brief overview of the organisation. Show that you've understood their mission, their values, any particular cultural characteristics that stand out, and consider any figures or dates that are significant. And when you are showing off your research into the organisation, make sure you've gone beyond that initial homepage on the website, delve that bit deeper, and really understand what they're trying to achieve and what they're all about. And clearly, what not to say. You don't want to be admitting that you've not done any research. You don't want to respond to this question in very general terms by saying things like, oh, I've seen that you're a very big global company, you've got great plans going forward, because that really shows that you haven't looked into the detail of what they're all about. Talk me through your CV. So absolutely, this is one to prepare for. And I should say at this point, you can't prepare for every question. You can't possibly know everything they're going to ask you, but this is one that you should definitely prepare for, being able to talk through your CV and talk through your experience. And again, you want to briefly summarise your education and work history and draw out those key achievements and successes that you're proud of and that are particularly relevant to the role that you're going for. Don't go into lots of detail and go through every single point on your CV. That would be going into too much detail. So focus on those things that are important to the employer that you're going for. What interests you about the role you've applied for? Again, so this is another opportunity into which to really showcase your research into that organisation. Try and match your skills and experience to parts of the job description. So if they've highlighted particular skills like teamwork, organisation, leadership, match your experience to those key skills. Make sure they understand why you're the best person for the role. And it's a great opportunity to get your passion and your personality and your values across. A very important question. And obviously things you don't want to say in response to this, things like the salary is good or I need a job. You want to avoid responses like that. Again, get your passion across for that particular role. What experience do you have that makes you a suitable candidate? Again, so there's another opportunity to tailor your experience and your education to that particular role and show how it's relevant. So as part of the interview, you might draw out your key skills and attributes. You might say that you're a very good team player, for example, but always link it back to that particular role. So you could say, I'm a great team player, which would be brilliant when working on projects for you and obviously whatever organisation that is. So always link it back. And within your work experience, show what duties and responsibilities you've carried out that match that job description. And again, another very obvious answer, something you wouldn't say to this question, I made the tea and emptied the bins. No matter what your experience is, even if it doesn't seem immediately relevant to that particular role, you may be able to draw out those soft skills that are important. What are your career goals for the future? So this is an opportunity to show passion for your personal development. You want to showcase your commitment and your strengths. And it could be that you talk about what your immediate short-term goals are. So what do you want to achieve within the first 2 to 3 months of working for this organisation? But you can also look long-term as well. So where do you see yourself in the next year or even the next 2 years? And it may be that you talk around how you want to explore different opportunities in different departments, because there may be things that you don't know. But show that you know that you want to progress and that what you're looking to achieve over the next few months or next few years. What not to say? Doing your job. Again, these very simple answers that don't really showcase your personality or your strengths. And you'll always get asked, whether it's a telephone or a video interview at any stage of the recruitment process, do you have any questions? And you should always have some questions to ask and have a bank of killer questions to hand. It could be that over the course of the interview, some of those questions are actually asked, are actually answered by the assessor, but you should still have some others that you can ask at the end. And it may be that you've also asked some questions during the course of the telephone or the video interview, but still ask a couple at the end as well. And in terms of questions that you ask, Make sure that, again, they show off your research into the organisation. So you could say something like, I've seen on your website that you're looking to increase your market share by 10%. Please, can you tell me more about this? Because again, it shows that you've researched that company, you're interested in what they're all about. You could also ask questions around what do they expect from you, what do they enjoy most about their role. We will cover off some good killer questions in future webinars. What not to say is you definitely don't want to say, I don't have any questions. And again, it surprises me how many candidates do actually say this at the end of an interview. And just going back to my earlier point, you may have already asked a couple of questions during the main course of the interview, but you still need to ask one or two at the end as well. And I'll now hand you back to Sophie to talk you through the STAR technique.
Thanks, Helen. So hopefully that's given you a bit of an insight into what to say and what not to say. Now, you may have come across this model before if you've tuned into one of our earlier webinars, and we do bring this up in a few of the webinars because it's relevant to so many different situations. So we recommend using this for answering application form questions, for telephone or video interview questions, and also for final interview questions as well. So the way to use it is that you're applying a particular example that you have and following the model so that you're giving a full response that will tick off hopefully all of the criteria that the employer is looking for. So with the situation, you're outlining the situation that you were in that particular example. You're then talking about the task and what was required of you. The action is what you did and what actions you took and why. And then with the result, you're summarising the results of your actions. And then that final bit, reflection, is focusing on what did you learn, what would you do differently in future. And by following this model, it will help you to show your relevant experience in a clear, concise and confident manner. So some top tips to wrap up with before we hear from Gemma and share the resources for this webinar with you. So to show the best you want to take your time, stay calm and don't speak too fast. Be polite, smile and avoid using any slang. Be confident and professional. Do your research and know why you're attracted to the organisation and to the role. Have your CV, application form and job description if there is one to hand. Be prepared, make notes, and definitely, if you get the opportunity, ask questions. Let's hear some final thoughts from Gemma.
Well, in my hints and tips, pretty much I've seen a video of somebody not breaking them, but kind of going against my advice with clearly looking down and reading notes, in their joggers, in a quite messy room, and kind of hearing lots of background noise. So I've pretty much seen a video interview covering most of those elements. But also one that's quite funny is, I had a question in the video interview bank, which says it wasn't assessed, and it was, what food would you take on a desert island? And one candidate thought because it wasn't assessed, I wouldn't see the answer. So instead of answering, I would take potatoes or whatever it could be, they actually just went la 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 through the whole answer. So obviously it assumed that I wasn't going to see it. I found it quite funny because it wasn't really a question that I was going to kind of assess, but somebody else might not have found it as amusing as I did. So even if a question is asked or framed that it won't be assessed, don't assume that no one's going to see it.
Thank you there to Gemma. So I hope that you found the content of this session useful. Remember, you can go back, rewind things and spend a bit more time on certain slides that are particularly standing out for you. In terms of what we're going to be covering next time, we're going to be looking at assessment centres. So we'll be looking at what to expect. We'll be looking at in-person assessment centres and digital or virtual assessment centres. We will also be covering the different types of exercises and how you can be ready for each of those. So lots of content, definitely come back and join us for assessment centres. A few resources here, so there's a couple that we'll share with you. We'll share with you the practice websites for the video interviews and also the interview preparation using STAR worksheet. The Career Service are your biggest resource, and we will keep plugging them in all of the webinars because we know that they're doing some amazing things and that they're able to offer a lot of their services on a remote basis. So if you haven't already, definitely check out what they are able to offer. And just to finish up, here are the Twitter handles for both SRS and for the Career Service. So again, if you're not following either, then choose your favorite platform and get following. So thank you very much for joining us on this session, and we hope to see you again next time.
Thank you.